I'm so sorry online.
We're working on it, Al. Hang on.
Okay, so now I'll share again. Where was it? No, thank you for saying that. Unmute. So like I said, for you as a parish to begin with, I think you want to start with your long-term objectives. And all the stuff that we talk about, you can do for long-term, and you can also do with shorter term, like on a project basis. But if we start with long-term, so like I said, there's long-term and short-term. Long-term is overall, short-term would be, we want to communicate about our new meal ministry. And how do we do that? But today I'm going to kind of focus in on the bigger picture. At the diocesan level, if any of you were involved with the strategic visioning plan, we came up with new mission and vision statements. The last time that we had updated those, I think, was in 1994, quite a while ago. And it was time to do some new ones. I don't know if anybody remembers our old one, but it was hugely long. It was like this giant paragraph and a lot of words that sounded really good, but didn't really get us anywhere.
Can you share your screen on Zoom so they can see the slides?
I thought I was.
You're not.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll get this right, maybe someday. All right. Sorry, guys.
St. Francis, too, while you're doing that, Janis, I'll say, I'm just pulling up our website. So that
Now,
everybody here knows, like, who could tell us what it is?
I would recognize what iteration it is, but I can't respond to any of them out loud.
So if anybody could memorize it, we are a loving, diverse, and affirming community. Loving, diverse, affirming. We're a place of reflection, inquiry, and service. We are an inviting community of Christians known for meaningful worship, faithful service to our neighbors, each other, and God. It's beautiful, hard to hold on to, right?
can't put it on a t-shirt.
Hard to be out in the community and be like, we are St. Francis, we are boom, boom, boom. So we're a loving, diverse, and affirming community. We are a place of reflection, thoughtful inquiry, and service to others. St. Francis Episcopal Church is a growing and inviting community of Christians known for meaningful worship and faithful service to God, our neighbors, and each other.
So that's exactly where I was going. My next slide was, this is what I found on your website. That's who you say you are. So when you communicate, you might want to think about, that's up to you guys, whether you want to redo that or not. Let's see. You can probably sit down for a couple minutes if you want to. Don't want to make you exhaust you here. So everything that you do when you communicate should have this goal in mind. Okay, so if that's your goal, how is what you're communicating serving this purpose? Okay, and to get to that, you want to have initiatives. You want to have the action, right? The verbs that get you to be who you say you are, right? Okay, so the first thing you have to figure out, actually, now I'm gonna, who's your target audience? Who do you want to reach? Young family. Okay, Ruby, why don't you come up and do some? We'll give Janet a break.
Same page?
Yeah, let's do a new page. Let's put this one up here.
Well, this is a modern invention. You don't need a masking tape.
Oh, it's awesome.
A new experience. We didn't have it.
Lori, how long do we have for the class? 10, 15?
I'll put this slide out about 10
Okay.
after, but
Okay. Okay. So target audience. Young families. Do you talk to each other? Do you talk within your parish? Communicate? You're right. It's a big part of who your target audience is.
Well, the arbors in particular, we've done many things with them.
So your neighborhood. Mm-hmm.
I'm going out to local businesses and others in the state churches in the area.
Okay. Okay, so, okay,
And we are as a church by participating in the Chamber of Commerce.
okay, so local businesses, that sort of thing. Okay,
I put empty nesters at 50 to 65 sort of age group.
good. That's me. I can relate.
The children were keen here with the preschool and the godly play is
Mhm.
fantastic. So
Mhm.
I think that should be a category in itself, is kids, because.
Okay, so not just families, but kids.
Playground is open for them
Mhm.
to play.
Okay.
So it's
Okay. Okay, good, good.
I think that we have, again, we have our internal audience, of course, and you know, the question about reaching people who aren't a part of us is a tricky one. I think we have a unique kind of market in the area in that there are a lot of very much more traditional and conservative churches. And there's a lot of places where you can feel like you basically aren't wanted and have been kicked out.
Mhm.
And I've heard that message from a number of people who've been here. It's like, well, I was X, but I didn't feel like I belonged to them anymore and I
Mhm.
wanted a place where I could be. And I'm not quite sure how to frame that exactly because there's sort of a lot of different hot button ways you can say that.
Sure.
But we do, I think, tend to pick up people who have not had accepting, again, we have that word of acceptance, they're accepting experiences in other religious environments. And this is something reasonably unique that we have in the Eureka area to offer.
Mhm. I can't tell you how many times I go around, I visit all the parishes, and we have some that honestly, they're almost their entire membership would have no place else to go in their community if it weren't for the Episcopal Church. You know, they wouldn't, they would not be accepted in other churches.
That's it. So I
Mhm.
have started a spreadsheet this week of everybody, and since since my starting here that I could know of, and how they have come to St. Francis.
Mhm.
And what's interesting to me is, because that's gonna help us set a target audience.
Right,
It'll help us narrow down a target audience.
right.
And interestingly, most of the people who have come here were looking for an Episcopal church. It wasn't
Really?
because of our concert or because of,
Mhm.
okay.
it's because.
They were
Yeah, so
specifically
that
looking for
says, you know
Episcopal.
what? Maybe we should put our resources toward a big billboard on Highway 44.
Mm.
Says the Episcopal Church. Say,
Mhm.
we gotta work harder to get that Barb Sacco and Sylvia have one of the signs that says the Episcopal Church, out on the
Yeah.
corner of Portland and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
So
right.
Traditional seekers.
Yeah,
traditional seekers. Traditional and non-traditional, maybe.
Might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but I think the corollary of that, which is, honestly, I never thought about it, but when I came to St. Louis, I was definitely shopping Episcopal churches because I was Episcopalian.
Mhm.
But the data on denominational affiliation is that most people don't have that, or they've been disaffected with their denomination.
Yeah.
So they see denominational. So given we have a real denominational brand, then our communications challenge is trying to figure out how do we help people understand what that means.
Exactly, exactly.
Who are we?
And maybe that should go under what we communicate is who are we as Episcopalians? What does the Episcopal Church mean? That's something you might want to add to that list.
The message list.
Mhm.
Yeah, we got number 6.
Yeah. All right. We're in action here. We're adding to our list.
I came here because I was a Catholic and my son told me that he didn't want to go to church anymore because that.
Oh,
So I did financial school.
right. Yeah. Hey, God in the Catholic Church does too. Just Catholics don't want to recognize that. It's the same God. But yes, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, honestly, I can't you guys would be amazed if you go to different churches and, I mean, so many people tell me I wouldn't have a church to go to because you're the only church that accepts me. And that's a big selling point. Mhm.
The last thing what I would like to say is that as I've talked to new members over the years, who've been here and been back every time. And what they say is this community is so loving. You love one another. I wanted to be part of that.
Yeah, that's so nice.
So I don't know if I just call that a loving community or whether
So,
they're actually looking for that.
Yeah. So
I
maybe,
think that's a marketing challenge though, because everybody thinks that's true of their church.
yeah, possibly,
Everybody
yeah.
believes that, and but that's not what you necessarily find. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but is that accurate though, Janice? Because I have to say, other churches that I have worked at, that is not what people say about why they're at that church.
Well, no, that's what people think is, every church thinks it's welcoming. Every
Mhm.
church thinks it's loving, but the question of people who hear it say, no, wait a minute, you really are. That's, to my mind, the marketing challenge we have, is that that's not just something we aspire to or falsely imagine.
Well, yeah, and you have to be sure of it too. You have to not just say that you are, but you really have to be. Once you get those people in your door, you really have to be. You don't want to do false advertising here, right?
This group does that, I assure you, Janet.
I believe you. I believe you.
Yeah, I've told you too many times in the last.
I believe you. Okay, Ruby, rip that one off, put it up. We're going to go to the next question, which is, what's your message? Again, talked about those kind of things. I don't know that we need to redo all of it, but you need to think about what, really hone that down. That's a lot of messages. That's a lot of messages. Well, actually, your messages are not as long, but that's how you communicate. But what's your message? What do you want people to know about you? And then when you're thinking, we're talking long-term here, but for the short term, like if you're on a particular project, like if you're having a certain event or something, that's very easy to target, right? My message is, we're having a concert for the neighborhood, and that's really easy. But longer term, it's a little bit harder. I think you do want to think about bigger picture things. What is it that's important to you? Loving each other, being open and welcome. That's a really important thing. So your message, you want to hone that in a little bit for your overall goals, but you don't want it to go, too nutso. You want it to be what you really are, because you're right, Michael, everybody says, oh, we love everyone. But you walk in and you don't necessarily feel it. I've been in Episcopal churches that I didn't feel it. It's not just because we're Episcopalians, but it's who you are as a parish.
Can I ask a question
Uh-huh.
of everybody without answering out loud?
Mhm.
What image do you think of when you think of St. Francis? Okay, what was it? What picture comes into your mind?
The people.
Let me think of another way. If there's one symbol to represent St. Francis, what would it be? One visual symbol, what is it?
Open arms. That's it. What is
Oh,
it?
that's so funny.
What is it? Open arms, like.
I'm thinking it's our dove, right? Like we have our dove everywhere.
Yeah, a brand.
Like you wouldn't be like, oh, well, maybe we should do the steeple and that's what we'll put on our flyer for the meal ministry. Or maybe on our website, we should have, open arms. And no, it'd be like, well, we have to have the dove everywhere. That's our visual brand. And we need a missional brand that is as clear cut as like, it just goes like that. That's what we lead
Right.
with. That,
Right.
I mean,
Mhm.
is that? a
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
correlation?
It is a good correlation. And I think those two things, I think those two things should connect as well. I think your visual identity should connect with your missional identity. So once you get your missional identity, you might want to rethink your visual identity. So your message is open arms, maybe open arms. Yes.
Worship, love, service.
Worship, love, service.
There's a kind of happiness here in St. Francis that I haven't found in other churches.
Mhm.
And I believe the source of it is because people who come here are always doing something with somebody else.
Mm.
Always, constantly.
Mhm. So happiness, just the community that you feel here.
It's more than contentment though. It's just like, it's,
Going out and helping each other and having, you cannot have a new ministry or a new committee because everybody's taken, everybody everybody's ready.
Uh-huh. So how would we put that in? What do you think? What's a good way to say that?
I like to call it being Jesus by doing what Jesus did. Reaching out to those others and not just taking care. That's what drew me. Once I walked in the door, y'all went like that. And it drew me in. But the fact, once I got here, you guys actually care about what's going on in the community. You care about other people, not just the people who show up at 10:15 or 10:30 on Sunday mornings, but you want to be out in the community doing other things.
So maybe that's it. Maybe it's care for each other and the community. Yes, Doris.
We are disciples of Christ, period.
That's what that means, right? Disciples of Christ. Right. Okay.
I think as far as the sort of Episcopal branding piece goes, there is a traditionality and a beauty of language and a depth of theology that we have that I don't think we express well. It takes a while to dig into it, to realize that we're not just doing la-di-da-di-da stuff, but what we're doing is very thoughtful and careful, that our worship, everything we do means something.
Mhm.
Again, I don't know how you put it.
Well, maybe that's part of it, helping people understand what the Episcopal Church is about. So maybe that's part of your message, what it is to be Episcopalian.
Not to unpack this too much, but I think over time, there's layers to this messaging. So if you have a target audience, and then speaking marketing for a second, you do sort of some kind of profile or psychographic profile, like, well, who are those folks just in and of themselves?
Right.
And then you can start saying, well, if we've got to help them understand what being an Episcopalian is, that's sort of one communication challenge. And then there could be any number of those built around that.
Right.
Depending on how layered you want to get about a strategy.
Exactly. And that's, the strategy begins with this big picture, and then you pull out the little pieces. You pull out each of these messages and you say, how am I going to do this? Next question, how will the message be communicated? So you could take each one of these and say, okay, well, a good way to do this is maybe through social media. A good way to do this is to go visit the Chamber of Commerce and talk to businesses. A good way to do this is to do flyers in the neighborhood. A good way to, there's no one right answer for here's what you need to do to communicate. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at with you guys, is that it's multifaceted and it takes a lot of effort, and a plan can be very helpful in doing it. So like when you were doing, Donna, when you were organizing the meal ministry, you had a plan, right? Right. And so you knew what you had to do to get things done. You knew you were going to need a certain number of volunteers. You were going to have to get the food. You were going to, get a place to distribute it. You were going to have people donate goods. You had that whole thing. And it's the same way with communications. You have to think of communications as a ministry. not just something that Leslie and Lori do. It's a ministry, and it takes everybody to do it. So we've got, okay, our message. So how will your message be communicated would be to go back to, where's our list, all of these things and figure out what you're going to use, all of the different ways you can communicate and how you're going to, what works for each message and how you're going to do that. And a timeline is really important. A timeline will get you from having a task force to think about how are we going to start this. Lori's talking about, having you guys meet to discuss your mission and vision. And I think that's a great place to start, start from there and then build from that. And obviously you're going to have to be doing things in between that you're going to need to plan for. But if you have that big overarching goal, you're going to keep working towards that, if that makes sense. So your timeline is, let's say if she wants to call a meeting for next week, I'm just making this up. If she wants to call a meeting for next week for your mission and vision, and then you guys come together and you start talking about, you start throwing out words that are important and images in your head when, of who you are as a parish, then how do you pull all of these things together to get that out? And you're going to have to prioritize because you're not a huge parish. You're a very healthy parish, but you're not a huge parish. So you're going to have to prioritize, where does social media fit in and how many volunteers do we have for that? How does photography play in? And who do we have that can do that? How does live stream fit in and who can do that? So it takes saying I think this is what's most important to us right now. And putting your resources in what's important. And that's something that only you guys can figure out. Ruby was asking me, well, what's the best social media to use? I'm like, well, it depends. Who's your target audience? If you want to reach teenagers, I'd be on TikTok or, those kind of things. If you want to reach people our age, I'd be on Facebook. If you want to, it's different. There's different age groups and there's different studies that show you what works. And the timeline, that works especially if you have a specific project. Like I'm working on a project. You guys are going to be learning about it really soon. I'll give you a little inside scoop. The bishop is bringing back the annual Bishop's Appeal, where it's like a little mini campaign, capital campaign every year, because he has priorities that are over and above the annual budget that he wants to meet. And he's going to ask y'all to pitch in some. But it's a very precise timeline. We're going to do it during Lent and then it's done, So we have a timeline. So right now I am scrambling like crazy to create brochures and postcards and remittance envelopes and website pages. And I have this whole list of things I'm doing for that. But it's a timeline, this is when I'm doing this and this is when I'm doing that. And here's who I need to help me with this, and if you get that down, it's going to go smoother. Like I said, it's wonderful when God just drops in and helps us get things done, but God likes it when we plan. I'm convinced of that. And here's a big one. Who is going to be responsible for the communications? Not just Leslie. How many hours do you work a week, Leslie?
200, I think.
And how many do you get paid for?
25.
25 hours. Yeah, she can't do it all. Ruby's doing a lot. Yeah.
Ruby does so much.
Ruby's awesome.
So there is something I've run into in my workplace, which is we have a public relations office at community college. So anytime I do anything that goes out to the community, I'm supposed to run it through the public relations office for branding purposes to keep me basically from doing anything incredibly stupid. Though I will say they did put out a billboard once that had a typo on it that did not reflect well for our branding.
Yes.
It was like, you don't want to reinforce that idea. So there's this horrible trade-off you have to do between sort of spontaneity and efficiency and uniformity of messaging, uniformity of branding. That, you sometimes really, there's an advantage to having the gatekeeper, but that also slows everything down by quite a bit.
Sure.
So do you
Yep.
have any ways, how do you sort of handle the balance and all that?
You have to build in time for it. You absolutely do. And everybody needs an editor, and your editor needs an editor. And, I can tell you, like, I have a magazine coming out. You guys, if you're on our mailing list, you'll be receiving it this week. If you're not and you want to be, send me an email. And I, after I sent it off, found a mistake that is ugly. It's an ugly mistake.
Mhm.
And I'm just waiting for the calls to come in. But we're human and everybody makes mistakes. And that's one of the best things about working for a church, is that we do love each other and we can accept that. But ugly mistakes are still ugly mistakes. And so layering, building in layers of editing and overdoing everything. And we can't always do that in small churches. We don't have an unlimited staff to do that. So we have to help each other.
This is a hard copy or email?
It's a hard copy that's coming out. Yeah. Yeah.
How does one get on that list? How many years ago, we get the IC that came in paper?
Right.
It's Seek. Seek comes in paper, and that's, yeah. Yeah, iSeek is the one on the
How many
internet.
people here actually have gotten it in the mail at their house?
Yeah. And I haven't put one out in almost 2 years.
Yeah.
The last one I put out was right after Bishop Dion was elected. And he's had a big emphasis on video and doing video, and being one person. We don't have a large staff at the diocesan office. I'm the only communicator. So so I just, something had to give a little, and I'm trying to work it back in to get print going, because I think print is important. I don't, somebody was making fun of me saying that they were going to put their print publication in between their typewriter and their mimeograph machine. And I said, yeah, well, that's fine. You can do that. But
Somebody does want to get on the list to get the paper
Mhm.
issue.
yeah, you can contact me, or there's a page on the website that I can show you guys too, that you can sign up. I'll show you that. But think about who's going to be responsible for the communications, and don't make it always be Ruby, Leslie, and Lori. Don't just assume that they're going to get everything done. It's important to pitch in with this. And even if you think I'm not a good writer, or I'm not, we all communicate all the time, right? Because we talk, and we have to help each other. It's super important. Let's see, that might have been the last. Okay, so that was the last one of this. So I'm going to stop my share. So what I would like to encourage you guys to do as a parish is to start with that big picture, the big picture of who you are, who you want to be. Your mission is who you are, and your vision is who you want to be, right? It's how you get to your mission. And so think about that, and then think about the different ministries that you have, what your message is, the tools that you have to communicate that message, and then your timeline, who's going to do it. Those are the kind of questions you have to ask for the big picture, and for all of your small projects that you do as well. Whether it's, I'm a huge proponent of websites. I think they are the most important thing that you can use as a parish. I think everything that should be the center of all your communications. I think it's so important, and it's so difficult to keep them updated. But everything, that's where people find you. Very few people just walk into a church anymore. They find you online first. It's just like if you go to a restaurant, if you're thinking about going to a restaurant, you're going to look online first and say, what does that look like? What are their menu? What are their prices? What are they, it's the same thing with the church. What do the people look like? You want to show pictures of what's happening in your church. Would I fit in here? Do I look like I would fit in here? You want to show that you have things going on. Don't tell me about that last year's Easter service will be at 9 o'clock. You got to keep it updated. have accurate information. That's a huge important thing of it. And then, and talking and keeping yourselves in a loop, I think is probably the second most important thing. That your website can be for your members and for outside, but having a good newsletter is really important to keep you all updated. Whether, do you guys have a weekly email? I'm not on your list, I don't think.
Do we ever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I need to,
Yeah.
okay. I need to subscribe to that. But,
What's it, e-newsletter?
yeah, yeah. And that's good. I mean, it's important for everybody to be able to know what's going on. And then, but then from there, you got to think about each thing that you're communicating. Does this have a purpose in our mission, in our goal? And if it doesn't, why are we wasting our time on it? And is what we're doing getting us closer to that vision? Is what we write, what we show in pictures, what we do in the community, it all should be headed towards that. And I know this is kind of like big and esoteric, but you can use this kind of planning, like I said, with your individual projects as well. And it's so helpful. It will increase your efficiency in getting things done. It will help you get more people involved in communications. It will help you keep a record of how you do things. We did something like that a couple of years ago, but I don't really remember what we did. Well, you've got this plan that you could go back to, and say, oh, we used this and this and this, and here's who worked on it. And it's very helpful. It's very helpful. And I hope you all might think about giving it a try. I don't know. Any questions?
I want to be clear, when you said newsletter earlier, I said, well, we do that on Friday with email.
Mhm.
Is that what you were talking about, or
Mhm.
paper?
You can decide. I mean, I think email is probably the easiest thing for everybody. And it's certainly the easiest thing to produce now as a communicator.
You didn't think.
Yeah, no.
you needed to add a weekly.
No. Oh,
mailing.
gosh, no.
I figured that, but I wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, if you wanted to have maybe a quarterly or something, I mean, that would depend. Again, you have to set your priorities. What's the most important thing? What is going to produce the best results for us? What message do we want to get out? How are we going to get out? When are we going to get it out? And who's going to get it out? Those are the things you have to ask for everything that you do. And it should always come back to that, your vision and your mission.
Thank you so much, Janice.
You're welcome. And I would just like to add that communications you can have a ton of fun with communications. It can be so much fun. And so don't think of it as drudgery. It's Ruby knows it's fun. We have fun with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for coming out.
You're welcome.
Thanks to all of you for being here and thinking through this with us. You can anticipate that we'll probably have an all call, to Ruby's been very good about putting in our annual report. If you want to be part of communications, Della has been really good about inviting people in as well. So, and of course we have Janet and Sue who work on the events already, but if you're interested in helping us to create this plan that Janice talked about, please let us know.
Yeah. And I would also like to add too that I'm here to help you. If you guys have questions, need specific resources, I may not know how to do everything, but I can help you find the right people to do that. We've developed a new group called the Communications Advisory Team. And I know not every parish has the ability to pay someone specifically for communications, to have a communications person on their staff. And so what I've done is tried. There are about 5.
Yeah.
There are about 5, and that's my team. And you're going to be hearing from somebody soon who's going to be your liaison, and is going to say, hey, tell me about what you're doing. What do you need help with? What can the diocese do for you? So I can't be everywhere all the time, but these people are going to help me get out there, and I'm so grateful for them. So, don't ever hesitate to call me. Lori knows how to get in touch with me. Leslie knows how. I'm on the diocese diocesan website, you can find me. But we're here for you. We're here for you.
Thank you.
All right, yay. Happy Sunday.